strata forming in different parts of the same ocean or in different oceans would be subject to differing hydraulic conditions and could not be considered as continuous.
Now we're going to talk about the Grand Canyon.
The geological column was conceived on the assumption that the principles of stratigraphy applied as a general law, with a barometric demonstration that the principles of stratification do not apply where there is a current, challenges the basis upon which the geological column was formed. As with particles of sediment, organisms get swept along laterally by strong currents and deposited successively in sediments in which they become fossils.
Here's a fossil.
When the sediment is hardened into rock,
Right.
the position of the fossils
Here's another one.
provided no indication of age.
Later.
Fossil 1, in the upper strata for instance, was deposited before fossil 2 in the lower strata. Fossil 1 could therefore be older than fossil 2 in the lower strata. For instance, in a 1994 publication entitled The Grand Canyon, it contained an item contributed by PhD geologist Stephen Austin, which referred to two papers, one by sedimentologist D.M. Rubin on the relation between hydraulic conditions and stratified structures in the Bay of San Francisco, and the other by J. Southard, which summarized a 39 series of flume experiments on the same relations. Rubin summarized these relations diagrammatically, showing the speed of current, depth of water, and size of sedimentary particles necessary to produce the different structures.
Here's the first
found in
time it's really
sedimentary
ever been
deposits.
tested.
Having recognized the same structures in
In
sedimentary
1600s.
rocks as those in Rubin's diagram, Austin applied the relationships
Tonto
shown in the diagram to the Tonto group in the Grand Canyon. This geological formation extends for 800 kilometers from east to west and corresponds to a transgressive sequence of three facies. The upper facies is limestone, the middle facies clay, and the lower one sandstone. As predicted by Walter's law, the same sequence of facies is found side by side. By means of Rubin's diagram, Austin determined that the hydraulic conditions that would have existed when the sediments giving rise to the rock facies of the Tonto group were deposited. These conditions were principally the velocities of current in the transgression, which caused the water to rise more than 2,000 meters above today's ocean level. The maximum velocity corresponded to the initial erosion of the subjacent rocks by the invading marine waters. The velocity was greater than 2 meters per second. Just a few days, therefore, would have been necessary for the ocean invasion to submerge the entire 800 kilometers. The velocities of currents would have decreased as the transgression reached its peak and before the waters started to subside. It should be noted that current velocities needed to build the Tonto group and to transport the sediments correspond to those recorded in the flume experiments. It is therefore not unreasonable to say that strata in the Tonto group facies would have formed similarly to those in the laboratory, that is to say vertically and laterally in the direction of the current. As the speed of the current decreased, the particles deposited would have been increasingly fine, giving rise to the three superposed and juxtaposed facies of the Tonto group, sandstone, clay, and limestone. The advancing water contained differing current velocities. The heavier particles deposit in faster currents than the finer particles. All of the deposits would have taken place virtually simultaneously. The resultant formation of the larger particles of tapete sandstone at the bottom, the lighter bright angel shale or clay in the middle, and the very fine particles of muev limestone on top is exactly what the flume experiments, Walter's law, and the laws of sedimentary mechanics would predict. There is a perfect correspondence. The deposition of sediment would therefore have been rapid. The coarser particles would have deposited due to the velocity of current falling as the water rose. The finer particles would have started to deposit as the ocean approached its highest point. During the period that the ocean stayed at its maximum level, there would have been little or no current. In the absence of a current, the finest particles would deposit at a speed of about 2 centimeters per day. This is an example where superposition does take place. Being limited to calm water conditions, however, it is excluded as a standard principle of stratigraphy. The deposition of the finer particles would be interrupted by the reappearance of a current when the waters started to subside
Now
or
they
regress.
subside, right? So it's another
During
10
the
months.
subsequent marine regression, the reversed currents would have reached velocities sufficient to have eroded deep valleys in the non-consolidated sediments deposited during the transgression. The Tonto group is attributed to the Cambrian period, which according to the geological timescale, based upon the principle of superposition, lasted 70 million years. The aforementioned data, based upon sedimentary mechanics, would reduce significantly that part of the timescale attributed to the formation of the Tonto group.
Days.
Superposition and continuity should therefore no longer be taught as principles, as they have been proved by experiment not to be a general or inclusive law. The geological timescale was established on the belief that the principles of stratigraphy applied generally. The empirical proof of their limited application must involve important changes to the scale. The Tonto group was attributed to the Cambrian period, which according to the timescale took 70 million years to form. By application of sedimentary mechanics, it has been shown that the group could have formed within several days.
Several days. Not 70 million years, several days. Remember about the whys?
Do I need to retire? I'm sitting here thinking, do you fight or do you just...
No, you can't fight.
You can't fight. You'll just be fired.
You'll be
You just go along with it.
You'll be fired.
We can't go along with it. Maybe you just need to do a lot more qualifying.
Yeah.